Good morning, guys. So my winter wonderland is finally back, and as you can see, we kind of switch weather from day to day this time of year here in Sweden, but it's very nice to have a little bit of snow. But enough about that, let's get into it. So today you and I are going to talk about building the right thing at the right time. Now this is a tricky one, and this is the one where if you can master this, especially as a junior programmer, I mean even senior programmers don't do this and get caught up in things. This is probably the hardest thing for well, basically everybody, especially for those of us who are very passionate and really love to play around with new and fancy technology and so forth. But I'll explain the problem to you and what I think you should be doing. So let me just stop me if this sounds familiar. You sit down, you have a new specification at your job, or you have a new project or something. You want to build something, and then you have this idea, right? This thing that you're going to create, right? And the first thing that starts going through your mind, yeah, you know, this would be really cool to do in React Native. That would be really cool. Or maybe, yeah, this would be pretty cool to build in Elixir. Or maybe it would be really cool to try out how about setting up a provider pattern, so that, you know, if you start there, if you can recognize any of what I just said, then you are perfect for this video, because I've been there a million times, and I'm here to tell you, don't do that. Don't do that. Do not do that. And the reason why I don't want you to do that is because you have created a situation where you're now asking the question, all right, what do I want to use in order to solve this problem? But that's the wrong question. That is the absolute wrong question. You are not supposed to do that. What you're supposed to be doing is to ask the question, all right, this is the problem. What is the most stable and fastest way that I can solve this problem for whoever is asking me to build something? I'll tell you a story. I was job hunting a few months ago, and at one of the jobs where I was talking to a consultancy agency, and I had a very, very lovely conversation. Like, they did so cool that they actually had an like the manager there was a non-technical person, and he had the he had, you know, sense of, you know, the wits to actually bring a programmer into the interview, so that we could actually have like a discussion about code. And, you know, because he's not a technical person, and that's perfectly fine, but he was smart enough to understand that me, he kind of got a feel for me, and he knew I wanted to talk to a programmer. So we sat there and talked and talked, and I might be a little bit weird, but I have my own interview questions for, you know, the people I'm going to work with. It's just kind of odd. Like, it's apparently most programmers ask the question, okay, how much money can I make? And that's the only question, which is kind of weird, because, you know, and I told them, to me, it's more important who I'm going to work with. That's why I have my own interview questions, because I spend a lot of time keeping in touch with a large amount of communities, and like trying to understand what is relevant information right now for programmers. So that means that if I'm talking to one of their people, I can very quickly hear what skill level they are, or like what level of interest they have in their profession. So, said and done, we're sitting there, we're talking, and they tell me about this project, or rather, we were talking about React specifically now. It's front-end related discussion, and that means that I already know what they're going to say, or if they're truly interested in what they do, or if they're just on the hype train with everybody else. So I ask, all right, so can you give me a few examples of a project that you've been using React for, or maybe something like that? And they said, yeah, we use React almost all the time. And I kind of go, immediately my bells go off in my head, like, all right, so you're using React for everything? That's a rookie mistake. In my opinion, it is a rookie mistake. If you're throwing React at everything you're building, then you don't understand when you should use it and when you shouldn't, in my opinion. And then they say, yeah, and, you know, we do a lot of React Native too. And I'm like, immediately. All right, bells are going off again. That's a warning, because if you're using React Native without a clear use case, this was actually perfect that I hooked into that immediately, because I can now tell that they've put themselves in a corner. Now they will prove to me definitively if they know what they're doing or if they're just doing what I'm warning you about. And I said, all right, so could you tell me about the React Native stuff? What is the, like, what would you say is your strongest use case for React Native? And they kind of go, well, we really, you know, we kind of just wanted to try it out and play around with it. And now I have them, and I got them. And I say, so wait a minute, your customer wanted a solution that would fit on both Android and iOS, and they asked for React Native? No, they just wanted for Android. Okay, so you introduced the requirement to know React Native instead of just having Java as the requirement, like just to know the Android platform, which means that the person, like the company that now has your customer, now needs to find a React Native developer, which is a much smaller group of people than an Android developer. Doesn't that sound like you kind of took you kind of made the situation a little bit worse for your customer, so that you could play around with fancy technology? And they couldn't really answer me. Like, yeah, you could probably look at it that, and I'm like, immediately, and this is what I'm talking about. They have used the wrong thing to solve a problem for a user. They used, like, basically they built the wrong thing for the users, from the user's perspective. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to tell you here, is that you need to know when to build the right thing. You need to build the right thing for the right time. It's the same thing with over-engineering. I mean, if I've made 100 videos, well, 100 is a strong word, but a lot of videos where I'm trying to explain to you that if you're using microservices at small scale, you are building the wrong thing at the wrong time. You need to build the right thing at the right time, and this hurts. It hurts a lot, because you get inspired by these tech talks, you get excited about all these fancy cool toys that are out there in the world, and you want to use them, and then you convince yourself that you need them, or that it's a good use case for your project, and you start using them, and then you realize that shit, this is not actually a good use case, and the project suffers because of it. And that's actually very dangerous. I've used this analogy several times. You need to have the mindset that when you start, you look at, you're building a road for a small town. You look at the town and you ask, all right, the coolest roads in the world, like the super highways and so forth, that's probably a very bad fit for this project. And let's start with a dirt road and take it from there. That's the minimum thing we can build, which is going to give the most value. You build it, and then you evaluate, was this good enough? And if it's not good enough, then you iterate again and you build something a little bit fancier. And finally, when the city catches up, if it ever gets to that point, then you build a super highway. And that's very ungrateful, because already very unsatisfying, because that way, Fredrik, what you're saying is that we should just use like stable technology to solve our problems. When I'm saying no, you should not. You should ask yourself why you're building the thing you're building, and use the right thing to build it. You shouldn't convince yourself that just because you think something is cool that you need it, because most of the time you don't. You're just giving into, basically it's like buying training equipment at the TV shop. You're giving him, you're not thinking straight. If you're not already working out every single day of like 6 times a week, odds are that buying something from a TV shop isn't going to give you a 6-pack, because you're doing the wrong thing. You should get the motivation to already work out that much, and then maybe you buy the thing if you need it. I don't think you do, but So what I'm trying to say to you here is that you need to solve this problem for yourself. You need to and this is something I see, it's actually a very big benefit to being a little bit more conservative and not being like super passionate about coding. I find this in senior developers who have, especially in Java, like a lot of, I had the good fortune of working with the true master of Java back at Ticketmaster. This guy, my God, he has skills, like immense skills. He's still there. And I learned so much from him about, maturity and like understanding how to do the right thing. And he did not give in to the trends. Like he could sit in an entire room with technical people who were all hyping different cool Node projects and stuff, and he would just sit there and say, yeah, it's a Node is very interesting, but for our use case I can clearly see these, and like he very in a very constructive, very logical and methodical manner just broke everything down and said, these are the requirements that we have, and Java is actually a better fit for this use case than anything else. And he was right. Nobody could really argue with him. He is right. It's just that everybody wants to use the cool tools. So here's my tip how to solve this. Get weekend projects. That's what I do. I want to play around with tools. I want to play around with all the shiny toys. Do personal projects. Do small personal projects that allow you to indulge in that. It's like having a cheat day when you're eating, like when you're on a diet. Have those small projects and play around with stuff. Just do it over and over and over, because finally you will have that awesome moment when you will actually be in a situation where you get to build a super highway. But don't force it, because the project will suffer. And remember, you are there to build good software. You're not there to indulge your need to play with fancy tools. And that's it. That's a harsh truth. And as I said, the best way to solve that problem is to have cheat days.